while back, I did a stream segment kind of pondering on the idea that maybe an AirTag from Apple could be a reasonable substitute for theft recovery systems that cost an order of magnitude more. Think like LoJax or Scorpion, these alarm systems with recovery components. After that stream, I got an email from somebody that suggested that I should really put it to the test and that, they could help me out with that. Initially, I ignored it, just like I do for all the other emails I get regarding this channel, because they're either offers to do paid advertisements, which are, to be honest, often in very, very broken English, or they're cycle cruiser threatening to copyright strike my channel, and why would I respond to any of that? But somehow this one buried a seed in my brain, and I started to wonder, well, how well would it work? Where would I mount it? Would it transmit well through the materials, like fairings? What about the metals of the frame or the liquids inside the gas tank or the engine? Would it need to be line of sight in order to track correctly? If somebody hotwired the bike and it had an AirTag in it, would I be able to track it in real time? What if I had an AirTag in my bike, but then they stole it and took it somewhere without any foot traffic, like a shack in the middle of nowhere? Would it be any use at that point? Answering all these questions seemed like a great excuse to go for a ride and do some experiments, so that's what I did. And I'm going to present you the results of that today. I'm Alex, aka Squid Tips. Let's go.
First things first, I wanted to figure out what the potential was for being able to track down these AirTags in the best case scenario, and get an idea for how different mount points affected the distance I could receive signals. To try to be a good science boy, I used the iPhone's measurement app to mark out some important distance milestones. To start, I walked out 300 feet, which is the distance standard Wi-Fi is supposed to be able to reach in dead air. Hold on. I'm going to mark this. I'm gonna go steal that cone. Next, I put the AirTag on top of the bike, and using the Find My app, I stepped away until I started to lose a connection. There are 4 levels of directions you can get from the AirTag depending on how strong the signal is. First, before it ever gets a signal, it just gives you a last known location via the Find My app. Oh, so it can make noise. Once you get to the point where it's close enough to actually get a signal from the device, the app screen changes to this dot scattered circle with no information other than, I sense the presence of an AirTag.
I felt a great disturbance in the force.
If you get closer, you'll eventually get the same screen, but some additional distance notifications, helping you know what general direction the tag is in. Finally, once the signal gets strong enough, you'll get the advertised full directional arrow pointing you precisely to the tag. The experiment I planned was to mount the AirTag to various parts on the bike and then walk away, measuring the distance at which I get those various signals. I chose 5 different mount spots to test. The first was the control, right smack dab on top of the tank. Next was a central point at the front of the bike to see if the fairings were enough to noticeably degrade the connection. Side note, I really think this makes the face of the R1M look like a whale shark. Am I fucking crazy? Like, these are similar, right? Third was inside the trunk, underneath the rear seat. Same logic for this as the front mount point, except this was to test the materials my seat was made of, which is largely cloth and foam. Fourth and fifth were opposite sides of the bike, just inside the front fairings. This would help me test the directionality of the AirTag to see if I could detect it from the opposite side of the bike. Although a small word of caution, I'm not entirely sure an AirTag would actually survive these mount points from the heat expelling from my engine and oil and all that shit. So, maybe think about that before you try to replicate any of these tests. The results of all this were pretty consistent with a few odd outliers that helped me discover an important design aspect of the AirTag. For each of the mount points, the distances that I would get each connection strength were relatively similar. At around 250 to 300 feet, the iPhone began to detect a basic signal. In the 50 to 80 foot range, you could start to get the distance feedback. And at about 15 to 25 feet, I would finally get the precision directional location information. Okay, so now the weird stuff. When I put the tracker flat, so it was perfectly parallel to the ground, the connection became noticeably weaker. The other odd result was when I put it on the reverse fairing side of the bike. My assumption was that this would be a worse connection because it was pushing through the bike, through the engine, the oil, the metal, the other shit that motorcycles are made out of. Pretty sure there's mithril in there somewhere. Anyway, when I put it on the opposite side, I literally couldn't walk far enough away to lose the basic connection with the AirTag. I mean, I tried really hard. I walked way past my 300-foot marker into the backside of the parking lot to the point where I couldn't go any farther without losing line of sight, and we weren't doing that until the next test.
Okay. What in the fuck?
So what possible reason could I have for these outlier results? I had a theory, which was confirmed later when I did some supplemental research. When building radio transmitting devices, you need an antenna to broadcast the signal, and how you design that antenna system impacts the directionality of the signal. We all remember antenna gate, we all remember people touching their finger on the side and dropping the connection, right? Like, antenna design matters.
We started getting some reports of people having issues with the antenna system, which is a very advanced new antenna system. People were touching X marks the spot here, and they were seeing large drop-in bars. And this has been since dubbed Antenna Gate.
There's an awful lot of hoopla, hoopla, around the iPhone antenna. When you grip it with a death grip, and your call slips away.
We haven't figured out a way around the laws of physics yet.
You might intuitively think that this little puck would broadcast in an even sphere, but not quite. The AirTags seem to have two antennas, one at the top and one at the bottom of the device, and they broadcast in an umbrella-like shape. This creates a dead zone I noticed at the edges of the AirTag, which has important implications for how we should mount it for the best signal. So after having tested this best case dead air scenario, it was time to try the worst case. Experiment 2 was about really testing the bounds of the AirTag's ability to permeate through and around objects. Materials that most affect wireless signals are dense stuff like metals, which reflect, and liquids, which absorb them. Ideally, I'd have access to like a Faraday cage or a bomb shelter, but I don't. So parking structure is just gonna have to do. Thin layers of concrete aren't too hard for normal radio waves like Wi-Fi to get through. But parking structures don't use thin layers. They use an amount that, I don't want to get too technical with industry terms here, but it's technically called a metric ass ton of concrete, and they reinforce it with metals like rebar. For this test, I drove down to the bottom of my favorite, super secret, secure parking structure in downtown Seattle. Starting at street level, I went floor to floor, trying to see if I could get a signal from my bike spot on the 7th level down. I'm sure to literally nobody's surprise, I wasn't able to get a signal anywhere near street level. The first time I could even get the faintest signal was 2 levels away, standing right over the top of my bike. From that point, I decided I'd just kind of wander down to see what the signal looked like as I slowly walked closer to it. After looping all the way back down to level 6, I was finally able to get that basic signal when standing right over the top of my bike. I continued looping all the way down, but even on the same floor, until I got into line of sight, I couldn't get a strong enough signal to be able to get the directions or even distance feedback. Playing around with the concrete pillars, it was obvious how important line of sight was to the connection. Now this might seem like a duh idiot type of moment, but lots of other wireless signals seem to be able to retain connection bouncing around other physical objects in an area, so I actually kind of expected it to work around walls, but the AirTag definitely didn't do that. Through the wall just next to it wasn't any better. Although I was able to get a basic signal, I couldn't get any distance or directions until getting back into line of sight. I also wanted to double check and see if I had a similar problem when I was parking in a relatively normal area. A quick jaunt from my favorite parking structure is now the most infamous place in Seattle. That's right, the corner where 4 square blocks of the Seattle area seceded from the Union as of June 2020, and later apparently burned to the ground according to some news reports I read.
They've even set up a basketball hoop. That must be like that. That's like the athletics program for Antifa. That's how they keep everybody in tip-top shape. I'm very bad at basketball. These Antifa super soldiers would fucking kick the shit out of me on the basketball court.
Life somehow finds a way, I guess, and the whole place basically looked exactly the same as it did in May of 2020. It's amazing how quickly that can happen. Anyway, I had the same issues with line of sight around cars as I did in the concrete. So to summarize this test, the signals coming out of these bad boys are not strong enough to push through materials that are known to impede radio frequencies. Line of sight's also going to be really important in order to start getting feedback like directions or even distances. With these 2 tests done, I was ready to put it into a more real-world scenario. I needed to do something more realistic in order to see if it functions the way it ultimately needs to for me to feel like this can be even considered anti-theft at all. That's where my homie Tyson comes in, the guy who emailed me this suggestion in the first place. So for the real world test, I synced my phone to an AirTag and gave it to Tyson, who would then ride off somewhere, and after a few minutes I'd take a shot at finding him. For these tests, we wanted to make sure the person with the AirTag turned their phone off so that it wasn't constantly broadcasting the signal. Because we wanted to make sure that if it was broadcasting a signal, it was coming from other people's devices and not us. So off Tyson goes for his first test, and I was super excited to see how well it worked.
You will be hunted. Now, while he's doing that, let's see if my shit's tracking him. That's not true. You're not with me. Are you? Wait. Oh no! He left it! Oh no! Oh shit. Well, good test. I noticed it almost immediately too. Okay. Oops. No big deal.
So after Tyson pulled his head out of his ass and actually took the AirTag with him, I rode to a less packed area to wait and see if I got a ping for his location. At first it pointed behind me, and I thought he doubled back to fuck with me, but after 10 or so minutes it seemed to settle at a nearby corner.
Did you have to turn your phone on?
It was on because I didn't turn it back off.
Okay.
And then I got here and I fucking turned it off.
Yeah, it like went around the market a bunch, and then I was like, wait, did he just double back?
At one point I was behind you because you like went out and it took me forever to get through there.
Okay, so Tyson goofed the test up a bit again. That's okay. It's actually a good test as a control. Tyson needed another chance to redeem himself, and that's what restorative justice is all about here. I noticed a bit of a problem with how quickly I was getting data on where the AirTag was. It seemed to take several minutes to begin to register the device having been moved. I'm not talking like a relatively brief time frame. I'm talking like 10 or 15 minutes, which is a long time if you're trying to chase down a stolen bike. It seemed kind of like the AirTag needed to come to rest at a point in order to start reporting back to the Find My app. And that might indicate that it just needs to make a solid connection with the iPhones around it, which is hard to do from far away and is hard to do while moving.
I'm never gonna find him again. Tyson is the best hide and seeker. Oh. Okay, there we are.
I initially saw Tyson at a popular spot near the Space Needle with lots of foot traffic, but eventually it settled a few blocks away.
Did you hit the EMP roundabout?
I didn't go into the roundabout. So someone's phone in the roundabout maybe picked it up or something like that.
But you drove by there?
I drove by the EMP.
Okay. It took a long time for that first one to come up. I put it into lost mode.
I was moving a lot, so I mean maybe that was why.
Maybe.
As we were switching up whose phone the AirTag was connected to so that I could get chased, I took a moment to appreciate how easy Tyson took it on me. Because I sure as shit wasn't going to, motherfucker! Like most things I do, I methodically planned out exactly where I wanted to go because I had some specific tests in mind. I found a spot near a business complex on the western edge of Seattle, nudged back near some train tracks. Now, you may not believe me, but my intent here was not to just be an asshole by going somewhere that Tyson definitely wouldn't find me. I wanted to see what would happen if there weren't any iPhones near the end location. I actually wasn't very far from where Tyson and I started, so after 10 minutes, I finally turned my phone back on.
Okay, well apparently my super secret parking spot where nobody's walking around, that's completely dead, that I expected it to be hard to find, was not able to be found potentially. So I turned my phone on and I'm hoping that that now works. Oh, there he goes. There he goes. Did he see me? I don't know if he saw me. So what'd you see?
I didn't see anything until after you turned your phone on. And then...
Did you do the shove in the helmet method?
Yeah, because it was like totally gonna fall out there, and I was like...
Told you it works! Not great, but...
Brings me back to the flip phones, like way back in the day.
Yeah,
way better.
just jam it in there, yeah.
Okay, so this wasn't really a surprise that I was able to evade detection. I knew the distances it should connect to. I wasn't in a super popular or dense place. Nobody was really around me. Not really a surprising result. For the absolute final test, Tyson suggested it'd be good to see if he could catch a moving target. He learned with me on the last test though, if you don't set rules, I sure as shit ain't gonna make it easy. So he specified that I had to stay at the speed limit and I had to leave my phone on so we could confirm that the tracking actually worked on the move. After about 10 minutes of riding, Tyson said he hadn't got an updated location ping. I reseated the battery and son of a bitch, it started working.
He's nearby. There he is. There he is. There he is. There he is. I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna leave. But I'm only gonna go the speed limit. Oh shit. Sorry. Are you hungry? Yeah.
After several hours of testing, it was time to have some delicious Cuban sandwiches and discuss the results. So this was a lot of testing. Realistically, way more than that was necessary. But to be honest, I'm always scared I'm gonna miss something really fucking obvious and someone's gonna call me out and make me look like a moron. So let me just put everything here for the people that aren't gonna watch any of this and just want their motorcycle daddy to tell them what to think. When using the AirTag, to get the best connection strength, you want to align the AirTag in such a way so that the top and the bottom are pointing the directions that you expect to need to detect it from. On a motorcycle, that's probably going to be vertically. Line of sight is also very important because the ability to penetrate through anything not you or the bike is pretty minimal. Where you put it on your bike is pretty important for that reason, so taking time to find somewhere that has a good connection distance and will be hard for a thief to find is worth the effort if you ever do need to track it down. Remember, any thief is going to do a cursory glance around the bike to see if they can find a theft detection system. So put it somewhere you can get a good connection, but also somewhere that's not super obvious to the eye. If you ever have to go track it down, it's not going to give you a hyper precise GPS link feedback while it's moving. It's probably going to need to settle in order to give you an accurate location. What's far more likely is you will get occasional pings from when the bike settles down. Your ability to track the AirTag is also going to rely heavily on the density of people around you. If you live somewhere where there's lots of people, that means there are probably lots of iPhones. And more iPhones means a higher probability that it's gonna get a ping any point it comes to rest at. But the reverse is true as well. If your bike gets taken somewhere less populated, or with just no iPhones around, AirTags are probably gonna be worthless. So is it a good anti-theft device? Probably not. At best, this is probably a backup to a real anti-theft system, or in the worst case scenario and your bike gets stolen, it's a Hail Mary pass that maybe you get it, maybe you don't.
Now that we've tested it, this is a thing you're gonna do?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not perfect, so there's gonna be situations where it's not gonna work, but when it does, if it gives you a 50% chance of finding your bike, like I'll take those odds.
It's definitely just it's got a lot of weaknesses, I guess, or like limitations to its ability.
Yeah, it's basically like if you live in a big city in an urban area, it's gonna be best suited for you. If you live in a small town out in the middle of nowhere, I wouldn't get it. So
where can people find you, Tyson?
Yeah, guys, check out my Tyson Moto channel on YouTube and Tyson Moto on Instagram.
He doesn't have enough people to have a custom channel name, so maybe enough of you can subscribe to him to fix that, okay? Well, we are like 600, right?
Yeah, I'm at 600.
Need to be at 1,000.
I know, I need it.
Those are rookie numbers, gotta bump those numbers up.
Thanks again to Tyson for the help. If you enjoyed this video, then you should go check out his version and cyberbully him. Are there other like tangential things that are not in the motorcycle world, like the AirTag, that could have a functional use for motorcycles that just needs this kind of test? Please let me know in the comments. Would love to see it, would love the ideas. Kind of makes me feel like a fancy little science boy, you know? Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. Until next time, ride fast and take chances.